Hello, my name is Louis, and I'm making this podcast to share with you my experience in what it has meant, what it means to be a new Christian, somebody who has just recently come into my own in terms of what it means to walk with Christ. And I have to admit that the idea to do this has been in my head for a little bit. I would say that the Lord has been knocking on my door to do this for quite some time. And I've been reluctant to do so. While I've made other podcasts and I'm quite comfortable talking in front of a camera, because I've done it for a long time in terms of my usual topic, which is football or fantasy sports or, the like. But I was reluctant to do so because I felt like I didn't want to share something that I didn't feel that I had a full understanding about. Like I said, I'm pretty new to what it means to be a Christian, and I didn't feel like it was my place to start talking about it. But I think that what's changed is that in the last 10 days to 2 weeks or so, I feel like there's been a number of occurrences in my life that have allowed me to come into a deeper understanding of what it means in terms of my role and what that means to walk with Christ. And also, by no means do I feel like, oh, now I know everything. No way. I feel like I'm constantly learning. But I do feel that I've come into a place now where I do see the importance of where God wants me to use my gifts to maybe try and reach other people. As I say that, I'll start off by just, saying to you that if you were to tell me a year ago that I would be making a podcast talking about the Lord Jesus Christ, I would have absolutely not have believed you. I probably would have made a sarcastic remark and continued on my way. But and I say that because for the longest time, the way I live my life, I live my life always with the mindset of it being a very important thing to be a good person. Given some of the circumstances that I went through that I'll get into as this podcast progresses, I always felt like I needed to be a good person, if only so that I would not be responsible for making others feel the way I felt for so long. And what's funny about that is that because I always led with that, I mean, the jobs I chose, the places I went, the places I didn't go to, being conscientious about being a good person and being able to connect, good deeds, so to speak, with positive outcomes was all I ever needed. And that's all I ever felt like I needed to do in order to have a happy life, a good life. I always believed in God, but I can't say that I ever could truly say that I believed in Jesus Christ and in all his glory and in what he signifies. And I was not a Christian. And the reason why is because, I made the mistake that a lot of people make, which is, you see somebody that's a Christian and that's thumping their Bible or going to church all the time. And then I would see their behavior, and I would just see hypocrisy sometimes or contradictions. And that was all I needed to see to say, that's not what I'm going to be about. And I'm very blessed that in my journey that I've been on now for a little bit, almost a year, I was able to have great advice from a good friend. That the mistake that I was making was that when I was looking at other people and how they walked with Christ and how they maybe fell and short of what they were saying that they were about, I made the mistake of lumping all that together and being like, well, if that's how you are and this is what you're about, then that's not what I'm going to do. And I think that was a very, very clever trick of the enemy, which is what I call the devil. And again, even the word the devil to me right now seemed silly, because for the longest time I was convinced, as many of us are, that the devil is not a real thing. And as long as I could continue to believe that, then I could continue to do it my way. And that worked. I'm not going to lie. At least I thought that that was working for all of my life. You know, I'm 44 years old now, and for the first 43 years of my life, I felt like as long as I was a good person in terms of what that meant to me, as long as I did good things, and as long as I wasn't a bad person, then I'm in a good place, and I'm going to go to a good place. And, you know, being on the other side of that now, and I can clearly see, and I can say that that is not it. And I'll tell you why that's not it for me, and how that became evident. And maybe that will speak, you know, truth to some of you in terms of some of the thought processes that you might have. But I'll keep it brief. But basically, you know, there was a moment in time, maybe 10 months ago, 10 months to a year ago, where, you know, me and my wife were outside of our home. The kids were inside. We were on the driveway having some time to ourselves. And, you know, we had moved to Georgia about 4 years ago, and in that time, 4 years before that. And I remember, you know, as much as we loved where we live, because it's beautiful here. It's countryside. It's just nature everywhere. And, you know, we were pretty isolated from the standpoint of not really knowing people. And at the same time, we moved here during COVID. So isolating was not really seen as a bad thing. It was actually seen as a good thing. I don't mind sharing, but my parents died from COVID. May they rest in peace. And that sort of gave me even more of a reason to feel like isolating is good. You know, we have our family. We need to protect the family. And, you know, it's what we needed to do. And I feel like what at first felt like I was isolating from a disease, after a while, it felt like I was just isolating from people. And like most of you could probably agree with, there's reasons why you would want to isolate from people sometimes. I think that sometimes we live enough of our lives that we get to a point sometimes where we say, I'm done with people. I'm done with being let down. I'm done with people not understanding me. I'm done with always being misunderstood, and whatever the case might be. And while that may have been working for me, I could tell in my heart of hearts that it wasn't working for my wife. She loves me so much that I could tell she was putting her best foot forward, her best face forward, you could say, in terms of not allowing me to really feel her unhappiness, because she's a social person. She needs to connect with people. But I could tell. And while financially we were secure, and while, you know, we were safe, and it was beautiful all around us, I think that I got to a point one day in that driveway when I just, you know, I looked at her and I said, Sabrina, this is as far as I can take us. And I don't know why I'm telling you this, but this is as far as I can take us. And I always felt, back in those days, I felt like we were in a good place. We were in the best place. But there was something missing. There was something missing, and there was something that was left unfulfilled. And I'll never forget her face as she looked at me. And as I said those words, and then I followed that with saying that I feel like I need a mentor. I mean, I literally did not know what I was saying, but I knew that I had to say it out loud. And I said, I need a mentor. And the reason why that stood out for me, and the reason why that stood out for her too at the moment, was because I've always been in a position, and I mean, I've always been glad to be in this position too, where I've been in a position to give counsel to people. I've lived a very eventful, at times tumultuous life, where, you know, I overcame a lot of things, and I was able to extract a lot of wisdom from that. So that has always given me a sort of a role where people have come to me for advice, for counsel, and I've always been more than happy to do so. And I never questioned it, and I never thought of, you know, what it might be the other way around. But in that moment, I'm not in that driveway on that day with my wife, I remember saying, I need a mentor. I need someone to tell me stuff. And I remember getting emotional about it. And I was embarrassed because I'm not someone that gets emotional all the time. But I said, I don't know what I'm asking for right now, but I need someone in my life. I need a mentor. And she kind of didn't know what to say, and she kind of thought of ways that maybe what I was actually meaning. And I didn't really even know what I was actually saying or what I was meaning. And I think that's what made me emotional. But right there in that moment, that was probably the first step in the direction that I was ultimately meant to go. It wasn't until months later that that I met my friend Dave. I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning his name, but I met Dave, and Dave, he was a father of one of the kids on my baseball team that I was coaching, and as the Lord would have it, right after practice we would just chat, and me and Dave, we could not be more different if we tried, but at the same time, and I knew that right away, but at the same time, I could tell that we were very alike in the way that we aligned our values up, especially as it came to raising our kids in the world that, in so many ways has been unfolding so drastically right before us. And so those conversations, they progressed, and it was, soon I was looking more forward to our talk after practice than I actually was about practice. And one day he invited me to his home, and I went with my family. And when I arrived at his home, immediately I was taken aback by just how beautiful it was. I mean, it's just the most beautiful setting you can think of, and the house itself was also beautiful. And as much as it was beautiful aesthetically, in terms of like what it looked like and just the land, and there was something else. So this was like the second step. This was like the second experience that again allowed me to get closer to the Lord. But I remember outside of the house itself, outside of the brick and mortar, the wood, the beams, outside of all of it, which is beautiful, don't get me wrong, there was a feeling in that house. There was something there that I couldn't put my finger on that I wanted, and I wanted for my family. And I didn't know how to say it, and I was just getting to know Dave, so I didn't know how to tell him that without making him feel that I wanted his stuff, which is not what it was. I wanted him. I wanted his energy. I didn't know how to put my finger on it. And what was the craziest thing about it is that we spent the day there, and eventually, the late afternoon turned into the evening, and we were at around his fire pit, and me and him were just talking. And I remember it dawned on me, holy cow, it's Sunday. And the reason why that mattered to me was because I'm in the kind of person that watched football from day to night. Not one game did I miss, and my family was in the house with me, and I would find time to make little moments with them and make sure they didn't feel totally neglected. But I'm in 6 different fantasy football leagues, commissioner of 3. There wasn't a play that I missed. There wasn't anything that I didn't want to see as it happened. But all of a sudden, maybe because of that feeling that I was sensing, because of these questions that I was starting to have, I forgot that it was football Sunday. And that was such a huge, it might sound silly to some of you, but for me, it was huge. And I saw my wife talking with his wife, and I saw my kids playing with his kids. And I remember it was just a big aha moment. And I said, wow, look what I've been depriving them of, number one. Number two, how could I forget that it's football? And indeed, I definitely had turned football into this bigger than life thing. That this for all, to use the correct words, the verbiage, it was my idol. That was something that I could never miss, that I never did miss before. So as I left this home that day, I had a lot to reflect on. I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, something's going on here. I might not know what's in that home that I'm feeling, that I'm sensing, but I know I want it. And I know that I have to look in that direction. And as time went on and our conversations became more in depth, what was the most beautiful thing, and it's certainly the blueprint that I want to follow moving forward, especially as I make this podcast, is that at no point did I feel like my friend Dave was persuading me, or that he was brainwashing me, or that he was forcing me to think. By no means was that how this came to be. It was more my recognition of something that was lacking, and then again directly tying it into, wait a second, this is probably what I was talking about in that driveway a couple of months ago with my wife. This might be, what I was talking about. Dave might be this person that could serve this role to mentor me, and he certainly did. He did in the most beautiful way, because he didn't force it down my throat. He just told me. I told him, I said, what are you about? What are you into? And when I learned that he was about the Lord, and when I learned his story and how it wasn't, an easy peasy, something that just kind of came naturally, and I listened, and I found that my heart was opening to something that I had always rejected. And lo and behold, slowly but surely, I started to look at things in a different way. And it wasn't easy, because I had such an academic understanding, not just of myself, not just of my story, but of the world and the misinformation that exists, that keeps us all from truly being able to look in that direction. It's now that I see clearly the inner workings, the cleverness of the enemy, and the enemy is what I call the devil. And I'll say right off the bat, even now as I say the word devil, I feel funny, I feel silly, because for so long I was convinced that there was no devil. That's all make-believe. And in truth, there is no greater trick that the devil has played on mankind than to make us believe that he doesn't exist. So that's pretty much the gist of how it all began for me, and I'm going to get more in depth about that. But I don't want to just stay on that. I'll continue on that topic as we move forward. But my main purpose of this podcast is to hopefully make my story known, so that it can feel relatable, because I know that the very questions, the very obstacles that stood in front of me are the very same ones that stand right before a lot of us, a lot of people watching right now, that prevent them from taking those extra steps. I can wholeheartedly say now that while I may have rejected Christ in the past, while I may have thought that it was me that did all these things to overcome all these trials that I went through in my life, I can now confidently say that the Lord has always been in my life. And when I first began to realize that, I can't tell you the shame that I felt. Wow, I never gave you the time of day, but yet and still you bless me with all of these tools, with all of these insights to help me better understand, to help me overcome, to help me triumph in areas where I really shouldn't have. And you did that for me without me really deserving it, because I just did not give you any room in my life. And so now, as I move forward now, and as I come into a greater understanding, I understand why that was. And it's because God does not need you to be perfect. And that's one of the things that really held me back, because when you understand what salvation means, and what that offering that Jesus is extending towards us, what that means, it's going to be totally normal for us to feel like we don't deserve it. But the beautiful thing about Christ is that he gives before you have to earn. And it's because of that one feels compelled to earn it. So it's a beautiful design. And one thing I can tell you about Christ is that if you need verification, as we all sometimes feel like we do, if we need confirmation, look at his design. Look at the way that the Lord speaks to us, and how everything comes to us exactly as we need it. Someone very poignantly said to me once, if you don't have it, you don't need it. And that is something that I'm truly starting to understand, and that I want all of you to understand. before I could say that I truly submitted myself to the Lord, I could tell you that what stopped me from truly taking the steps that I needed to was exactly that. I didn't understand. How can this be? How can this be? I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. But what I can tell you in terms of how to get past that is that when we talk about faith, when the Lord talks about faith, He talks about faith in a way that is so beautiful, because if you knew everything that you needed to know, then where is the purpose for faith? Where is the need for faith? When we have faith is when we are demonstrating our trust for the Lord. And that right there is probably the single most important revelation that I've had in terms of being able to remain close to the Lord. Because the Lord, like I said, the Lord is giving you everything without you even needing to ask for it. And even as you may reject Him and as you may deny Him, He's still giving you time after time after time, as He's given me chances, opportunities. And so the role that I have to play in that is one of faith, which we can call trust, and obedience. And in my next podcast, I'm going to get more into what faith and obedience and what that has meant to me in terms of helping me progress to a point where I can be in a better position, in a better mindset to continue to learn more. But I can tell you, as I close out, because I want to keep these relatively short, I can tell you that there has been no better feeling that I have ever had in my life than the feeling that I have now when I'm close to God, when I'm close to Christ. The best part about this has been the lens that He has given me with which to see the world. I can see things now and I can extract from them wisdom. You know, I used to think that I could do that before, but it would always be a day late and a penny short. You know, it would always be after the fact. Now, what the Lord has allowed me to do is to see things accurately and to extract with them in real time the interpretation that He means for me to take from. There's no maybes. There's no I think. It's a definite and it's the most secure feeling that I've ever known. And so what I would implore to those of you that are thinking about turning to the Lord is to trust. Just put your trust, and it's very little to ask for in terms of what you will receive as a direct consequence of that. I aim with this podcast, as I said before, to make my journey, make my experience with walking with the Lord relatable and to feel like what it's been, which is possible. There have been so many moments that I have just, not had the words to describe what is happening. Not just for myself, but for my family. And I will tell you all that, the sheer truth of everything is that you are existing right now within a spiritual warfare. It says so in the Bible. And if you turn on the news, if you turn on those reels, if you put on the social media, you will see it play out right before you. It will be, very easy for the ways of the world to try and convince you that there is not a spiritual warfare, that all that is make-believe. But remember, the devil is very clever in his approach to you. The devil cannot convince you to do things, cannot prevent you from doing stuff, but he can study your patterns and definitely distract you into getting to where you ultimately want to be. As I close out, I would like to say that in my next podcast that I'm going to share, I would like to talk about the period of time that it took me from when I started to open my heart to the Lord until the actual day that I was saved, which was an amazing experience, and I can't wait to share that with you. And so as I leave you, I say to you that, if you're thinking about being with the Lord and what that might do for your life, for your family, for your kids, for your friendships, I can tell you that you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Again, I'm going to say it again. You have nothing to lose, but you will have everything to gain. Thank you, and until next time, go and be with the Lord.